Shall we start with, what's happening today, I suppose, when it comes to lecturers walking out, sixth form colleges walking out as well, posties and all of this? Look, should we just call it what it is at this point, which is basically a general strike?
Well, it's 11 years to the day when we effectively did have a public sector general strike, when 2 million workers took strike action against the Tory-led coalition with the Lib Dems government attack on pensions. So it's a big step in that direction. I think we need to go further. And I think what workers are saying on the picket lines is why shouldn't we strike together? I've been on the picket line this morning with postal workers. I've just come from King's Cross, where there's a huge rally in support of all the workers you've talked about taking action. But the thing is, Patrick, the issue is the same, isn't it? Perhaps it's even the reason why someone like yourself is conflicted, because I think you appreciate the cost of living squeeze.
I get the cost of living squeeze. I get the cost of living squeeze. Some of the issues that I have with it, nurses are a bit of a separate issue for me, I think, than the others, because that is much more of a life and death situation. Ambulance workers as well, by the way, have apparently, just in the last few moments, voted to strike. We'll bring you up to date on that. But when it comes to things like university lecturers, from someone who barely attended any lectures whilst I was at university anyway, I don't think I'll particularly miss them. Certainly no one will really die if a university lecturer decides that they don't want to be in work that day. What is a postie paid?
Well, I think I'm not a postie, but I think the posties are paid. You'd be surprised how little the posties are paid, actually.
But you do support them striking over pay. What are they paid?
No, the issue with the posties is not so much what they are paid, and whatever they've paid, they've had to fight for. It's the fact that the pay rise they're being offered is well below RPI inflation, which I remind you is over 14%. But the strings that are going to be attached to it, the attacks on their terms and conditions, and by the way, viewers should take on board the attack on the institution that is Royal Mail, which obviously was outrageously privatised, should be renationalised. That's the issue.
It's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it is hard for people to know, general members of the public to know, whether or not they should support a posties walkout, regardless of whether or not they're getting a pay rise in line with inflation, if they don't know what they're paid with to begin with, though, is it not?
No, look, I would imagine that posties are on 20-odd thousand £20,000. I don't think they're on a particularly great amount.
Yes, it is an average of about 24k.
Because they thought it was a secure job, but that's being taken away. Can I just take you back to the issue of the nurses, by the way?
Yes, please.
Because I think all those strikes are popular, but none of them will be as popular as the nurses. The nurses are going to get massive support because, Patrick, I'm sure you couldn't do a night shift on an hospital ward at the moment, whether you're trained or not. The RCN, by the way...
Well, especially if I'm not trained, mate. Let's be honest with you. There's no chance to be doing
Patrick, that. Let me just make this point. Your news story said that this is the biggest strike the RCN have ever done. Let me correct you. In England and Wales, this is the first...
Yeah, the only one, yeah.
By the RCN. The RCN traditionally hasn't taken strike action. The fact it's doing it now is because the members have got no choice.
Now, this is where, and I'm glad you've actually veered us towards the nurses, actually, because there is so much for us to talk about in terms of the different areas striking. And here's where I'm at, right? I think that they do deserve a pay rise. I don't think the one that's 19%. And by the way, there is no political support for that whatsoever in terms of the Labour Party or the Tory Party. Neither main political party, thinks that that's affordable, so it's not going to happen under any circumstances there. The 19% pay rise. I think they settled for 4% earlier this year, 3% the year before, maybe offer them something else and hope the strike doesn't happen. But I want your views on this, and this is where it all gets a bit fruity for me, which is that I found out late last night that Alderhay Children's Hospital and Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is, well, it's got a lot of terminally ill kids in it, right, let's be honest, they are two hospitals where nurses are going to be walking out, and that, for me, is really where the balance tips. And I want to know how you can justify that.
Well, first of all, look, it's outrageous that nurses are being put in this position. And just on those pay rises, I don't think nurses found the pay rises they had previously acceptable, but inflation is over 14%. Nurses have lost a fifth of their income in the last 12 years. The issue about those individual cases, let me make it absolutely clear, whether they're the nurses, midwives, or any emergency staff in this situation, those acute services, I am absolutely confident will be covered. The nurses will make sure of that. And that's why, actually, it's not just that we should support the nurses taking action, but the rest of the trade union movement should come to their support. And by the way, Patrick, when you said that no political party supports the demands of the nursing, well, that tells you that the political parties have got more in common than working class people want at the moment. And we need a political party that supports workers and a decisive a pay rise that they need. Okay. And on this issue of the 19, look, let me just deal with this issue of the 19%. Nurses have put a pay claim in because they've lost a fifth of their income, 20% of their income. Inflation is over 14%. But look,
but
I'm sure
it's everyone. The thing is, but the way it's being phrased, yeah, okay, all right, I get it. But I think a lot of people think that this is just money that the government is sitting on that they all have. But it's everyone who's going to pay for it. And let's say that eventually inflation does go down. I mean, fingers crossed it does go down, and pretty flipping quickly as well at that rate. But inflation goes down. Would you tolerate the idea that maybe workers in the public sector, their wage went up a bit in line with inflation for now, but then it's tied to inflation, so when inflation comes down, they don't get as much of a pay rise, etc. Because that's the concern for the public. That inflation is at this level now. We all, in our taxes, get walloped, propping up the public sector, and then inflation goes down, and you end up with a load of overpaid people in the public sector.
Patrick, listen, most trade union negotiators at the moment would like to agree pay deals of RPI inflation-proof pay deals. They would agree them. So the point you make in there, right, no issue. So if next year, lo and behold, inflation was 5%, RPI inflation was 5%, then that's, that's a negotiating point. The point is, though, Patrick, is that the employers will not give RPI inflation-proof pay rise. And of course, let's make this point that the Trust government, government lost.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying about that. I get what you're saying about Kwasi Kwarteng's budget. But look, can I just get? Do you think that some people are owed a job even if that job has become obsolete? Because that is an argument against some of the rail working strikes at the minute, that technology, etc., might mean that some of those jobs are unnecessary. Are those people just owed a living at the taxpayer's expense? Because I don't think they are.
No, I don't think those jobs are obsolete. I think if anyone goes on the rail network at the moment, it's a disaster. It's not that we need less staff.
Well, that's the point as to why I don't think a lot of them deserve a pay rise. It's a nightmare.
Ownership of the railways away from the private owners and back into public ownership.